There are some truths that don't just hurt, they tear your soul apart. Truths that once seen leave no path back. They destroy the fantasies you grew up believing, especially the ones you were taught to call love. But it's exactly these truths that have the power to free you from the lie, to break the spell that kept you drifting through life half awake. And among all of them, there's one truth that most men can't bear to face. Women don't love the way you love. They never have. As long as you don't understand this, you'll stay trapped in a cycle of endless giving, blind idealization, and repeated pain. You're not hurting because of her. You're hurting because you're holding on to a mental image that was never real. It's not the person that wounds you. It's the fantasy. It's not her that crushes you. It's the realization that what you believed was mutual was really just a projection. The biological reality Schopenhauer, the philosopher many called a pessimist, was one of the few who dared to say it clearly. He tore down the illusion of romance with a pen that never asked for approval. To him, what we call romantic love is nothing more than a biological trick, a system designed to keep the man distracted, committed, devoted, but never truly loved the way he imagines. What you call a soulmate, she may call stability. What you see as forever, she may see as something useful. And it's not because she's bad, it's because she's programmed differently, just like you are. But her logic follows a different path, and that gap between your idealism and her instincts is the true source of your pain. This isn't about blame, it's not about hate, it's about seeing clearly, about opening your eyes to a pattern that repeats in the lives of countless men who gave everything and were met with silence, not because they weren't enough, but because they didn't understand the rules of the game. A game where you offer your soul, hoping for eternity, while she responds only to an ancient, silent, efficient biological impulse. And when that impulse stops, you stop mattering. Schopenhauer didn't speak out of bitterness. He spoke from a place of clarity. What he saw in the bond between man and woman wasn't a romantic fairy tale, but a system of unconscious forces. Romantic love, he believed, is just a beautiful cover. Behind every promise of forever, behind every gesture you take as a deep connection, there's something else at work. A biological logic that never asks for permission. And that logic is cold, strategic, functional. For her, love is not some sacred ending. It's a tool, a way to choose. While you believe you're living a grand love story, two souls destined to meet, she, often without even knowing it, is measuring whether you fit her current needs. Status, security, provision, protection. Not because she's cruel, but because she's designed that way. Her instinct isn't built to idealize, it's built to survive. And when someone comes along who offers more on that silent checklist, her body senses it before her mind even realizes. The spark fades. You're left confused, wondering how love could vanish so quickly. But love was never what you thought it was. That distance you can't explain. That sudden coldness with no warning. It's not betrayal, not in the way you think. It's biological adaptation. It's evolution. You're still holding on to the story you were told, that if you love purely, you'll be loved in return. But she doesn't respond to purity. She responds to functionality. If you stop being useful, emotionally, economically, or socially, you stop being chosen. You stop being needed. The mistake isn't hers for changing direction. The mistake is yours for not realizing the truth. You were playing an emotional game, but the rules were biological. You gave your soul to a system that only needed a piece of you, and only for a limited time. You offered your heart where only your presence was required. You gave eternity where only a temporary benefit was expected. And while you were still believing in forever, she was already looking toward a new horizon. Not out of cruelty, but because her instinct stopped choosing you. Section 3. Awakening and self-realization. Since we were boys, we were taught a powerful lie, that finding the right woman would give our whole life meaning, that she would be our final destination, the reward, the cure for our loneliness, the shelter from the chaos of the world. We were told that if we loved deeply, if we were loyal, noble, and persistent, we'd receive love just as pure in return. That being a good man was enough, that devotion was sacred, that sacrifice was love. But no one told us the full story. No one warned us that she isn't dreaming the same dream. No one said that her choices don't follow romantic depth. They follow instinctual need. While you were building something eternal, she might have only been passing through. You laid the foundation of a castle, thinking it would be her forever home. But she was just looking for a place to rest for a while. Not because she lied, not because she used you, but because you misunderstood the game. The total devotion you gave wasn't seen as something noble. More often, it was seen as a sign of weakness. Because to the female instinct, security doesn't come from devotion. It comes from strength. And if your love makes you lose your center, your power, your dignity, then you become less attractive, less useful, less necessary. Men believe that the more they give, the more they'll be loved. But they don't see that unconditional giving often sends a different message, that they're willing to abandon themselves. And instead of creating connection, that often creates distance. Because in this hidden game of biology and selection, your value doesn't come from how much you sacrifice. It comes from how well you can lead without losing yourself, without crawling, without disappearing. And when she leaves, when silence replaces promises, the man doesn't just lose a woman. He loses a part of himself, because he made that story his identity. He believed his worth depended on being chosen. Schopenhauer said it without fear. What feels like eternal love to you may be just a passing chapter to her. You confuse it with destiny. She saw it as circumstance. The most painful moment isn't when she leaves. It's when you're standing in front of the mirror, realizing that everything you gave didn't change a thing. That your messages, your efforts, your sacrifices didn't mean the same to her. While you were building an emotional home, she was building a survival plan. And that gap, that abyss of meaning, is what breaks you. Because you thought you both loved from the same place. You thought you both wanted something deep, something eternal. But no, you gave your soul. She evaluated conditions, and now you're left shattered, begging with your heart for something she already resolved with her instinct. There's no going back. No words can reignite a fire that only burned because you served a function. Once you're no longer useful, you're no longer desired. And while you beg, she feels nothing. While you replay memories, she's already thinking about what comes next. Her instinct isn't waiting for your understanding. It just acts. And here's the cruelest truth. The more you beg, the more you disappear. The harder you try to prove your worth, the less worth you have in her eyes. Because the man who gives everything, without limits, without demands, without boundaries, ends up as an emotional, disposable object. Not because she planned it that way, but because instinct doesn't reward powerless giving. It rewards dominance, direction, self-control. And when you lose yourself in the desperation to win her back, you lose the one thing that once made you attractive, your dignity. You become the echo of a fantasy that never realized what kind of game it was playing. Schopenhauer warned us, with brutal honesty, the man who puts a woman at the center of his life becomes a slave, not to her, but to the image he created of her. And when that image breaks, there's nothing solid left, only ruins, only silence. But even in that silence, there's a door. And behind that door is your way out. The key isn't in her. The key is in you. It begins with a truth, a powerful one. I allowed it, not out of guilt, but as a starting point. Because if you allowed the fantasy, the blind devotion, the self-abandonment, then you can also allow your reconstruction. You can stop looking outward, stop chasing her, and start looking inward. Not as a man who needs to be loved to feel whole, but as a man who finally understands his own worth without needing anyone's approval. This doesn't mean becoming cold. It doesn't mean closing yourself off to love. And it definitely doesn't mean turning bitter. It means waking up. It means seeing clearly. It means understanding that a woman is not a goddess to worship or a demon to fear. She's simply a human being, driven by a different kind of logic. Her primary instinct is to select, evaluate, and move forward, not based on your emotions, but based on what her biology tells her, not your dreams, not your idealism. And now that you see that, you hold a power you never had before. The power to choose, not to be chosen. You're no longer trying to win her over. You're no longer trying to prove yourself, because the game is different now. When you stop idealizing, something stronger than illusion begins to form. Clarity. And that clarity whispers a new truth. Your worth isn't defined by how much you give or how deeply you love. It's defined by one thing: how loyal you remain to yourself, even when desire clouds your mind. And that clarity changes you. It restores the dignity you gave away. It makes you selective, not out of arrogance, but out of deep respect for your essence. Schopenhauer didn't want men to become cold. He didn't want them to hate. He wanted them to stop suffering, to stop playing a game with rules they never truly understood. He wanted them to awaken, to stop chasing transcendence in others, when the only real transcendence comes from within, to stop sacrificing their life's purpose for a promise that was never made from the same place. Because when the illusion dies, when the veil falls, something powerful is born. The man who doesn't beg for love, the man who doesn't plead to be seen, the man who never trades his soul for scraps of affection, the man who every single day chooses himself. And that man is the only one who is truly free.